This is Unearthing Eden, a podcast hosted by two witches where we will primarily be discussing all things witchy and metaphysical. Welcome to our garden. So, in this episode, we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into the Fae. So, the origins of fairies can go all the way back to ancient Greece, where the nymphs and the satyrs were commonly thought to be a type of Fae or their version of the Fae. The nymphs specifically are seen as very delicate, fun-loving, kind of trickstery almost. They like partying, they like relaxing, they live mostly in nature. And then the satyrs were half goat, half men. So the lower part of their body would be goat legs and the hooves, and they would also have the horns. And the upper half would obviously be that of a man. And they would often play music. They were seen as being the most trickstery type, specifically for the ancient Greeks. While the nymphs, like I said, were just more whimsical, the satyrs were more likely to harm humans or do quote unquote unruly things. So there were also sirens that were thought to be fairies in this time period, which were half bird, half women. We're not talking about the sirens that are like mermaids, basically, but they would lure men to their death. So they were seen as very beautiful face of a woman, and the rest of their body would be a large bird, and they would sing into sailors and draw them into their death. Now, there's also England's version of fairies, which were referred to as little people from around the woods, and early Christians also referred to fairies as fallen angels. But they were stuck on earth. They thought them to be too good for hell, but too bad for heaven. So when they were cast out, instead of going all the way to hell, they kind of stopped on earth as like a halfway point. So I'm going to get into a story. It's called The Stolen Cup. And it's about a boy and his friend who were out in the woods, and they find this little hole, and one of the boys is like, I bet little people live down there. And the other little boy was like, I don't think we should go down there. But he goes in there anyways, and he sees a family of little people, the Fae, sleeping in this little room that they dug out. And there was a cup there. So he took it and brought it back to his family, and his mom was super happy that he had it because, that's something they could possibly trade for or just have in general. But the dad warned him and said that he should bring it back and that you should not ever take anything from the Fae. So one day, him and his father were in his father's inn, and a merchant came in and took a look at the cup and told him that it was worth a lot of money and that he would be dumb to bring it back. But the innkeeper, his father, was telling him that something bad is going to happen if you do not give this back to them. So around that night, a man was returning back from whatever it was he was doing into the village, and he said that he was surrounded by the little people, and they told him to let everyone in the village know that the next night, whoever took the cup needs to put it back at a specific area that they described, and everything's going to be fine, and the person who returns it is going to be blessed. But if they don't, then everyone in the town is going to suffer for it. So when the innkeeper heard this, he made his son take the cup back, and he led him to where they wanted it to be. They put it back, and his family had good fortune after that. So they did keep good on their promise, but the Fae are typically known for that. They don't lie. So it wasn't going to be a trick. They really meant that everything's going to be fine as long as you give it back. They do give you a second chance often to right the wrongs. So next, I'm going to get into changelings. And this one's going to be a bit longer. I know that this was kind of quick getting to this point, but I'm also going to review the rules again. The last episode we went over some of the rules to working with the Fae. So I'm going to briefly go over that after this. But basically, changelings are known all throughout Europe. They are considered Fae children or adult Fae that have replaced a human baby with themselves. They often use glamour. It could also mean that they took an inanimate object and glamoured it to make it look like the baby. But mostly, from what I've read, it is replaced with an actual Fae baby. And they expect you to raise that baby while they take your child. And it could be maybe your child was born with, so back then the traits that they valued were blue eyes, light colored hair, but this was up in Europe, so that was like the beauty standard then. So if they said if your child was born that looked like that, then they would often take them because those were the wanted traits. And then it could also be somebody is gloating over your child, or they're like looking over at your child with either envy or too much attention. Then that could also draw attention from the fae. So it was seen as a bad thing. It's not very happy what happens to the changelings. In some cultures, they did raise and love the child as their own, even though they suspected that they were changelings, because they were worried that their real baby would be harmed by the fae if they found out that the child was being mistreated. But often they were not treated well. So, specifically in Germany, they would identify a changeling by confusing it, by cooking it. They literally thought that boiling somebody would make it come out, that and it would reveal its age and it's the information. They would put children in an oven. They believed that extreme heat would draw out the changeling or make it reveal itself. They would hit the child, extreme abuse cases. In Ireland specifically, there's an interesting case that I wanted to bring up when it comes to these cases of extreme abuse and paranoia. It's much like a witch hunt. They would target specific people who were outcasted or didn't look like they thought that they should look. And this doesn't just go through what they would perceive as deformities. It could be you're too pale, or you didn't learn how to speak as fast as other children, or maybe you learned to speak faster than other children. You were too smart, or you were sick all the time, or anything like that. And they could automatically assume that you were a change and do these things to you. So there was a case of Bridget Clary, and on March 15th, 1895, a grown woman, she was almost 30 years old, disappeared from her house. And rumors started to spread that, just speculating what was happening, they thought that maybe she ran off with someone else or that someone had kidnapped her. Now, 7 days later, they found her body, and trigger warning, she had broken bones and she was burned and she was left in a shallow grave. A couple of days, the truth came out that her husband had killed her. His name was Michael Clary, and her father also was a part of this, an extended family, I believe. They thought that she was a changeling or that she had a fairy dart, and that's what caused her lung issues. She did, I want to say it's bronchitis or tuberculosis. It could have been that, but they confused her illness with being possessed by a fae or being a changeling. And with tuberculosis, the strange thing about this disease is it was very romanticized. Later on, after that, it became a sort of beauty standard for a lot of people because it made you lose a great amount of weight. It caused you to become very pale, and it left you with a blush. So it emulated like what we would put on it, but it was from the fever, and it was seen as something that they wanted. It was a rich person's disease, essentially. And it was said that she had that, and that's what all of those symptoms was confused for being a changeling. I do want to get back into the rules of the Fae, just so we can go over it briefly. Just to get into a little bit with the rules again. Never say thank you to a fairy, or never say I'm sorry. They see those as very disrespectful terms. It essentially means that they owed you and they repaid a debt. So you would say something along the lines of, I appreciate this, or I'm grateful for this, instead of thank you. Never accept gifts from the Fae. Even if you leave offerings to them, this can still be a tricky thing, because when you leave something for them, they do repay you back, but they do so on their own time. So they could literally just not bother you as repayment for your offerings. Be very respectful to your environment around you. Don't litter. Don't disrespect wildlife and cause a disturbance to them. I also want to add on, we didn't talk about this in the last episode, but please do not release invasive species into your environment. Do your research. Do your research before you plant anything in your garden to make sure that it is also not an invasive species. We're just trying to help get the environment back to the way that it needs to be. And you can also do this in honor of the Fae. Be careful when you speak to them. Don't take everything they say at face value. They can kind of be really tricky with their words and how they say things. They're very picky about it, so they might say something and it has two meanings to it. So just make sure that you're being mindful of that. Don't lie to them and don't go back on your promises to them. If you go out of your way to make a promise to the Fae, please make sure you keep it and make it something that you can sustain. Don't try to say that you're going to immediately cut out all meat in your diet or you're going to plant this huge lush garden for them unless you know that you can do it and you can sustain that. Don't offer to give them your full name. Names hold power. So if you do so, they can hold power over you. Let them know before you dump out any water or any substance outside. Make sure that there's no harmful chemicals in it, first of all, as back to the caring for the environment part. When you dump water or anything outside, as I said, make sure it does not have any chemicals in it, but give them a heads up. Let them know that you're about to dump this water out. And just as a courtesy, don't throw water on a rock. That's something else that I learned, which is interesting. Next one is avoid telling people or bragging about your relationship with the Fae or anything that they do for you or tell you. Always make sure you get permission from them first before you share any personal experiences that you've had with the Fae. Ask permission to see them. Don't try to go fairy hunting or try to sneak up on them. It's not going to work. It could end up bad, or you just probably won't see anything at all. They typically will decide who gets to see them and who doesn't. On top of that, they do not like photos and videos. This is why you don't see them on camera. They don't like it. And do not accept food or drink from them. And finally, beware of fairy traps. And Sarah's going to get into that later. So I'm going to send it over to her to go over.
All right. So first of all, I just want to make a quick statement. So we're going to start with the fairy realm. While there isn't much information on it, it's important to remember that it's there and the information that goes on around it. Each culture is going to have a very different history for the Fae and for their realms. I'm really only going to talk about the Celtic and the Irish, and that's really just like the surface of it. Everything is in more detail, but we're going to talk about the fairy traps, which are going to be the rings, circles, or trails. These are going to be light or dark colored circles or trails in the grass, a circle of rocks or stones, or a circle of mushrooms. Most of the time they're going to be found in a forest, the woods, or in a garden where they feel safe to go from our realm to theirs or from theirs to ours. Now, as we mentioned in the Let's Talk, we should not go into a fairy ring or on their path since it will take us to their realm, and that is not the best place for humans to be. Now, the fairy ring or the fairy circle is going to be exactly what it is, but when I was doing my research, I was reading about a fairy trail. It has the exact same setup as a ring, except for it's a pathway where the Fae can lead their troops to take them from one area to the next. So if they're bringing a bunch of Fae with them, they're going to use that because it's like an easier route, so to speak. They could just line them all up and then they say, let's go, and then that fun stuff. So for Ireland, they have the Fae Mounds, which are also called the Fairy Forts or Raths. These are going to be hills or ancient burial grounds or mounds. The people believed that these hills were the dwellings of the Fae folk. Many sightings tell of fairies entering and exiting, and then coming and going pretty much from the fairy mounds. These are going to be portrayed as portals or doors to the fairy realm. Irish lore says to never disturb a fairy fort. Even the cutting of trees or bushes that surround it may warrant an individual's untimely death or a lot of spiritual issues, such as Mickey mentioned with the story of the cup. In Celtic mythology, they believe that there is a parallel universe or Earth to ours. Sometimes it can be portrayed as underneath ours. It's called the Otherworld. The Fae folk are often featured in these myths about the Otherworld. In the Silver Gadelica, the person Teague takes a journey across the sea and meets the fairy queen Cladona in the Celtic Otherworld. So it's going to be a land that you travel through mist and or across the ocean for. It's made up of many mystical and mythical islands, and it's similar to Earth, but it's also going to be slightly different. It is seen as a beautiful place, and it's a terrifying place as well. It's filled with wonders, healing trees, and fairies. but it can also be very dangerous and be a horrible place filled with monsters because at the end of the day, it is another world. And then, of course, it depends on the myth and whose journey it is. Many believe the Celtic otherworld is also where we go when we die. And the only reason I mention the Silver Gadelica is because the person Teague takes a journey across the sea and then he gets to the Fey realm and then that's when he starts to talk to the Fairy Queen. Um I okay, just to be fully transparent, I said her name wrong. It's Cliona. So it's spelled Cliodhna, and since that's Irish, I don't speak Gaelic. But she is the patron goddess of the county of in Cork, Ireland, and has been since the ancient times. Her magical domains are the sea and the earth, and healing, protection, love, beauty, renewal, rebirth, witchcraft, and death. Oh, she's very similar to Hecate then. Anyway, I'm not going to compare them. I just see some similarities. So she, like I said, is mentioned in the Tale of Teague. She's the most beautiful woman that men have ever seen or met. She lived in the Crystal Palace in the Celtic Otherworld and was accompanied by 3 magical singing birds. Cleona lives off of an eternal apple tree where her birds also eat and perch. She tells her men that the bird song heals all who hear it, and then she also gifted Teague a magical green goblet that turns water into wine. We'll do a follow-up episode on her, Queen of the Fae. The Fae can also dwell in our homes, and they can make their home our home. Most of the time, these are going to be called our household Fae. They're benevolent and nice to humans since you guys have to share a common area, unless they are angered. So they're going to live in your cabinets, closets, basements, wine cellars, barns, behind a fireplace or the hearth or hearth, depending on how you say it, or any place that they can find comfort in. They'll come out at night to do their work or tasks and then go back to their abode when the sun comes up or the human wakes up. Now, they may also help complete your chores. So if you see the stuff that you've been putting off and it's done, and the outside and the outdoors. They are known or thought to watch over the forests, rivers, and other natural places, and they ensure that these environments remain healthy and vibrant. The Fae are going to serve as a reminder that everything in life is intertwined, from human to nature to animals. In modern practices, people who work with the Fae seek to align themselves with the natural rhythms of the earth and cultivate deeper awareness of the world around them. The Fae are also going to be seen as spiritual guides that can show you the unseen mysteries of the world if you allow yourself to be open to that. And then a lot of our modern information is going to be very similar to our historical information, as we only know so much about the Fae since they are, I would say, for lack of a better word, secretive or protective beings who value their privacy. While they've been around since the dawn and age of time, we only know so much about them, which I think is really, really interesting. To be an entity that's just around forever and people are still figuring out new things about you, I love that.
I think it's necessary for them to be secretive in this day and
No, me
age,
too.
especially with how humans are in general and how the environment has just declined drastically. Could you imagine what would happen if humans got a hold of the knowledge and that
Oh,
it
forget
was
about it.
common record that they existed? They would never be able to live in peace.
They would never.
So, I did forget to mention a couple of things. I was supposed to go over the Seelie and the Unseelie court, but I got caught up with the changelings. So the Seelie court are known as the happy, prosperous, dancing fairies that we are more commonly portraying. So they would be more whimsical, more friendly to humans, kind of like the nymphs. The Unseelie court, literally the opposite. They are seen as more harmful to humans just because they want to sometimes, or maybe if they're more likely to have a lower tolerance for disrespect and they would actively punish people. They are the ones who may steal or cause illness and bring bad luck, and they are depicted as looking different than each other. So the Seelie court, name meaning happy, are more so depicted as being beautiful young women and men, and they are also painted as more youthful figures. So some of them actually look like children too, and they could be ancient, like they could be hundreds of years old, and that they look like children to us. And a lot of the times, it's to fit in, it's like a glamour. But I believe that the beauty standards of humans were often pushed on these creatures. I have heard of people also who actually work with the Fae, and a lot of the times they can glamour themselves to look like humans, but typically their true form looks a lot different, and their beauty standards are very much different than ours. So just keep that in mind too. But humans like to make other human things. So the Unseelie Court, obviously people associated them with negativity and evil. Like I said, they have different beauty standards than us. Just like how back in the day, it was being sickly that was in style, or having a literal disease that melts your lungs was considered beautiful, versus, throughout the ages it changes. So let's not judge. But I do think that humans have a way of artistically applying their personal biases to supernatural creatures, just in my opinion. So I wouldn't take paintings of them as face value, like, oh, if you ever see something like that, that's exactly what it is. They do take a lot of artistic liberty in these depictions of them, and mind you, we do not have videos or photos of them, so it's really up to somebody who actually works with the Fae that knows what they look like and what they present to them. So there are some other types of courts where they go for spring, summer, autumn, and winter, and they have their own little characteristics within those, but those two courts are the main ones. And then they're divided up into the seasons and the elements and different things as such. They also are said to have a queen and king over each court, and then it also can go down into like dukes, duchesses, lords, ladies, etc. and on. But each one has a loyalty specific to their alignment. So if they are a part of the Sealy court, summertime, that's their alignment with it. They would be in that little subsection of it, if that makes any sense. But that's what I wanted to share about the courts. I'm going to give it back to Sarah so she can finish what she was talking about.
Thank you. I also wanted to piggyback on that statement, to remind people that the romantasy books that we read about the Fae, that is probably not what the Fae look like. And as much as we like to believe and hope and pray that that is the case, probably not. Remember, we live in reality. Anyway, so here are some ways that we could tell that if the Fae are around us. I'm going to put this list on our socials so that way you guys can have it there as well. So that way, if I go too fast or you don't have a chance to write it down, you'll also be able to see it. So you're going to have a lot of misplaced belongings, mainly your keys, jewelry, coins, or other really pretty trinkets. If they see it and they like it and they want it, they're probably going to take it. And that's okay because they probably have a better use for it. Now, if something has gone missing or was taken, you may end up with a duplicate of your item. So you may find the, jewelry when you may find it just like in a random spot and be like, oh, great, let me go put it back. And then it's in the jewelry box or it's where you saw it last. So it's really unsure as to why that happens. People are thinking that it's the Fae returning to their version of their plane and hate in their haste, and they just had to return what was borrowed, but then they forgot that they left you, the piece of item already. I haven't had that happen to me. I've had my things taken and then I found it in different spots. I don't want to say taken, but it was definitely not where I left it. You may also have your chores completed. Any of the ones that you did not fully complete or were not done at all, they may be fully done now. They also may occasionally pick up the slack if they notice that you're feeling too overwhelmed, exhausted, overworked, so on and so forth. Fairy rings, as we spoke about, they're going to be circles formed as mushrooms, stones, or darker grass. This is how they're going to move from their realm to ours. Blooming plants or flowers, and you may be thinking, oh, Sarah, that's supernatural. Well, fun fact, they're going to grow in very random or odd or different places. Like a plant that may not even have been there before can just grow. It doesn't belong in this. I'm not going to say it doesn't belong in this environment, but it's not going to be hurtful to this environment. Like it's not like a naturally growing plant. There it is, which I think I love. Your animals may start to act a little weird. So they may look like they're playing with nothing, or they may look like they're playing with something that doesn't even exist, make sound, make noise. They're not playing with any of their toys. They're just like having a grand old time with something invisible. But it depends on the Fae's intentions because animals can pick up on that energy. So if they are scared or anxious, it's most likely going to mean that the Fae that is in your house or in your vicinity is not going to be as benevolent. We're also going to see spoiling food. The Fae may have taken a bite or two of your food, and that's going to be what's left of the food after they absorb the nutrients into their plane because they can't really eat our food. That's why they like honey because it's not really like something that can spoil, so to speak. Like they can take that with them, which I love. And then you're also going to have fleeting movements. And for a second, I had to figure out what this meant. But what happens is you'll catch a glimpse or a glance of them scattering or skittering away from the room out of the corner of your eye, and then you won't see anything in that area or that vicinity. So I think that's pretty nifty. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about, as you guys noticed, I haven't mentioned anything about astrology, but guess what? We have astrology. It's not a lot, but how could I forget her? Love her to bits. So the Fae themselves, again, it depends on the culture that you're working with. That is going to differ. But what I was able to find was the type of spirits or physical um thing, thing for lack of a better term, that they're associated with. So fire signs, which are Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, they're associated with the fire salamander or fire spirits. Earth signs, which are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, are associated with gnomes or earth spirits. Air signs, which are Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, are associated with sylphs or air spirits. And then the water signs are associated with undines, water nymphs, or water spirits. Now, as somebody who is a Capricorn, I actually am a little scared of gnomes. My mom likes to keep gnomes all around her house and her yard. I don't really like them that much. They give me the heebie-jeebies, but that's just me. So if Mickey has nothing else to say, I'm going to send it back to them for the tarot. Awesome.
So for this episode, we pulled the Nine of Swords from my tarot deck. The upright meetings for this card can kind of be seen in a negative light. It's not a very happy card, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's no hope. So some of the key meanings for this would be anxiety. Maybe you're feeling really low. You could be having a lot of nightmares or feeling isolated from other people, or maybe you feel like you don't really have a very strong support group at the moment. You could be going through something very hard, but understand that the pain also comes healing. So once you get through this stage, there are other things waiting for you. It just might mean that you're at a lower point right now, and that's okay. The reversal meanings for this could mean you're recovering or you are facing the situations head on. You might have found a really good support group. It can also, on the other hand, reversed mean you might be feeling shameful of something or very guilty. And that's something that can tie into your shadow work. I would say that look at the other cards that you pull around this and look at the placement of this card for your layout and interpret it as you will. This doesn't only mean bad things are happening. It just means that you might be feeling at a low point. And we all get to that point. It could be something big and major that happened to you, or it could just be an accumulation of little things that are kind of coming at you. Life happens. And I think that it's normal to feel anxiety about some things, and it's normal to feel bad sometimes, but it's getting out of that and working through that, and just the fact that you acknowledge that now is not a really great time. You also acknowledge that there are better times and that you're going to come out of this. So that's all I really have for the card. I'm going to send it to Sarah for the crystal.
Okay, so for this week, we chose Amethyst Spirit Quartz. Now, this is a decently rare stone. It's very interesting. So we're gonna think regular quartz, or the closest thing I can kind of equate it to looking like is like a rock candy with lilac, and it kind of looks like spongy in a way. We're gonna upload a picture of it because it's really hard to describe. Like I said, it's super rare, but the properties of Amethyst Spirit Quartz is that it can promote spiritual growth, enhance your self-esteem, and foster a sense of unity and harmony. It can also help dispel negative energy and promote emotional peace. It'll help reduce anxiety, balance your energy alone or in group settings. It's super powerful for energy work, manifestation, and connecting with your higher self. A huge stone for like stability and peace and just overall like big emotional growth. The zodiac signs that are affiliated with this stone are Aquarius and Pisces. For Aquarius, it's going to help enhance their intellectual clarity and prevent them from overthinking. It can also help with restlessness and insomnia. And then our Pisces is going to help them enhance their intuition, protect their aura, and it's going to help when they're emotionally overwhelmed, and they can help their spiritual like work focus. As I said, it's super rare, so you're really only going to find it in the mountains of Magaliesberg or South Africa. It really is not found in many places. I have never even heard of that country before I said it or found it or anything along those lines. If we need to cleanse our amethyst spirit quartz, we're going to use sage or Palo Santo, or we're going to use it under moonlight. And then onto our new addition, our chemical makeup. We have another silicone dioxide with iron and aluminum impurities, which gives us that rock candy type of look because the iron and aluminum replace some of the silicone in the structure of the crystal itself. Now, because this is a super rare stone and I didn't know about it until I was looking into super interesting stones that kind of go well with the Fae, I've never used it before. I'm gonna assume, Mickey, you haven't used it before.
I have not.
But I do know that I will probably be buying it for my husband since he's an Aquarius, and this man is super, super restless and has super bad insomnia most of the time. So I think it's gonna be really nice addition for him. His favorite color is purple as well, so I think it's just fitting all around.
I like that. That sounds pretty.
Right? Did you see? Okay, let me show you a picture of it. Did I send you a picture of it? So you can kind of take a look at it. Like that's why I said the best way to describe it is gonna be like rock candy or very sporous.
Mm-hmm. It
I don't
looks
know, like
really pretty. I like it.
yeah, I want to find some. That. Anyways, if anybody has ever used it, let us know, or has ever bought it, seen it, had somebody purchase it for them because I absolutely love this stone. Thank you guys for listening. Let us know in the comments how you used the crystal we showcased today, and if there are any you would like us to talk about in the future. Thank you for coming to our garden. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy our content.